still, I'm still learning all the technology. I thought I hit save and got ready for last week to post for those that weren't here, and I couldn't find it. So I appreciate your patience. If that happens this week, then I will try and just even do a video of an overview for those that aren't here. But I'm glad to see those that came in. Remember, this is optional, but I've always shared, and some of you all that are repeats coming in the Zoom, this is, I think, our third one, that, or second, third, that the ones that come, there seem to be a higher percentage of how they succeed in the class. So it may be a conversation. I've had conversations that have totally been perhaps on the logistics of going through the course programs, especially doctoral students, discussions on that. Some have been on the paperwork. Some have been just a matter because this last year has been tough, that we have used this to refresh and reflect, and just sometimes we have to do that, step away. And I think that that's important for the nature of what our department, conflict management, focuses on. If we get so busy that we cannot stop in a pause, and I'm associating that not only like what I'm talking about, us exercising it, but we go to the marketplace, our jobs, and we encounter concerns that individuals have. If we don't stop and have that sense of pause from busyness, then we're not going to have an effective organization, members, individuals, because coming from the, I can say now, because by the way, next week we're officially changing our installation here in Colorado. Let's see, there's a number of bases in the region here, but we're officially leaving from Air Force Base to now Space Force. So we are reflecting on space. And some of the things that we talk about is resiliency. The whole person, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally. And I think that's important, even to extend that even to me being your shepherd for the class. So with that, I want to kind of hit some logistics, and then we'll get into the meat of our coursework, and then any questions you may have for Module 4 moving into it. This is it's one of the modules I've really enjoyed, and even the feedback that I review from your submissions, the discussions, Truth and Truths, as well as Aristotle's Rhetoric that you'll be looking at. But this past week, the papers I've read so far graded, and I've already started grading papers submitted from Monday, as well as discussions. And I gotta tell you, I'm exceptionally pleased with the level of work that I'm getting from the majority of everybody. I would say 90% of your members in the course. Granted, there's been some interruptions by emergencies, pauses, by health issues. But one of the areas, and I think you may have seen my announcement, I hope you did, but you all got kudos because your first major paper that you submitted, there is a similarity score called Turn It In. Do you all know what I'm talking about? Plagiarism. You all have met the mark as far as, again, real low similarity scores. The percentages are low. I usually quick reference those to make sure before I do any grading, because if I have to send papers back, I will. I like to do it as soon as possible, because I will send them back. I've had some similarity scores, I kid you not, as much as 75%.
Oh.
And those are usually from students that, and they're not aware of it, but they may be repeating the class and they assume, hey, Dr. James, I had this class and I dropped it, but you have, and then they try and submit that work. Well, the Turn It In system picks it up as a similarity because it was already, submitted in a previous course. So for any of those that are repeating this course, that I encourage you to have your original work even for repeat. Nothing can be duplicated, but I don't see that being an issue. So that was something I was real excited about for this past week. Good referencing, not too many major issues, and I've tried to note that. Trying to think, I did have a question from a student that got in touch with me. You may have seen the post on the announcement, as well as an announcement I think I made. I think she got the module. They may have been a confusion with the module 5 for assignment 2, and wanted to know for that film analysis 2 is what I'm referring to. She said it was to be due on 2 August, if that's correct. That's not in module 4, that's in module 5, and I made sure I checked on that. So I just want to make sure you all are hearing it. Those that are going to be listening to this later, film analysis 2 is for 2 August. And if there was anything that needed to be changed, I probably would have had to talk to the administration about it, because I also checked the rubric in Canvas, and it does have that registered as 2 August. If I tried to change it, it may have messed up a whole bunch of other things in the system. So it looks like that's what they planned for that. Are there any questions on that? Any concerns? Okay, so looking at this past module 3 that you're wrapping up, it was exploring the empirical theories, communication theories, and we had a set of theories that we looked at, which were, where's my list here? I knew this was going to happen. Communication accommodation, which is the CAT theory. You also have the social exchange theory, social penetration, and social information processing. That was also there. Did you have any questions on any of those theories? There was some real informative, the discussions. I really appreciate how you all integrated your experiences and commentaries with theories that you chose to look at. But what was your insights on these theories? What did you glean from them?
I caught myself doing the communication accommodation thing as I, now that I've read it, I'm like, oh, I know what I'm doing right now, because I just read about it. So all weekend and then I was telling my wife about it and stuff. So it's funny once you've been doing it. I've been doing communication accommodation probably my whole life, or at least my whole adult life, but I never really paid attention to it until started reading about it. So I've become more self-aware, I guess.
Yeah, and that's what, when we're looking, I know Tammy asked about, some depth as far as the theory. I think last week, Tammy, was space negotiation theory and, more in depthness, but you're exactly right. When we look at the assumptions and the tenets that are there, and the one that you're talking about, I found it fascinating, that it has to do with how we interact with people that are different, but then how do we make them comfortable? Would you all agree with that on there? Yeah. So what about, are there any things, now that, I found it also interesting, and I have my little notes here too, that, there's different levels that the theorist, Howard Giles, focused on, like convergence, downward convergence, and then the one I found was interesting, over accommodation. Do you all find yourselves over accommodating to make other people comfortable? Or when, like, again, we're there, you walk, I always liken it to when I go to a conference, and especially being in the government, be it our US government or our agency, Space Force, and especially when it's broad in other agencies, you're not only having people, like you have your agency, that's your culture, like we're talking about. I mentioned space and the things that we do, the language, but then when we integrate internal revenue, Service or Social Security Service or HUD, Health, how urban and development, their language is different. And so I liken it to a conference or a retreat, but it's open and then you all converge in on that first day. And what would you say related to this communication accommodation theory that you see maybe the dynamics if we saw our first day at a conference? How can you see that you integrate this, some of the assumptions? And you know what? I am from the perspective there are no wrong answers. This is a general discussion. I say the wrong answer is the one that isn't answered or asked. So please don't feel shy.
Dr. James, okay, so I'm trying to understand your question. You're saying, how do we accommodate if we were in front of a different group, a conference?
One of the focuses of this theory is that we are going to adjust ourselves, or we are, how we interact with people that are different. But there are elements of this theory where we may make adjustments in our social interaction. So the one that we saw that was open accommodation is where there, or downward convergence, it's where we put others at ease. And so therefore we may lack in something that we need or is important to us in order to make that other person comfortable.
I guess in our language and how we speak to them, if we were the speaker, is that what you mean? Okay.
The speaker, or
yeah, using words.
Co-conferencees, you're a conference attendee. Let's say we're all conference attendees. And we've gotten to know each other, so we've got a little bit of our class culture here. And as I've mentioned, I just shared that other classes, there may be things uniquely different where, I present, as just for a minute ago, I said, you all get kudos because of just the dynamics that you're bringing to this class. And so therefore, that makes you unique, the interface that you're having with your groups. But then let's just move all 5 of us into a conference, a national conference. We're going to go to the American Psychological Association conference, since I enjoy referencing an APA, I'm an advocate of that. So we're going to go, and the first thing when we get off the plane, it's like, let's get our rooms, we're all settled in, go to dinner, we're great. But then the next morning you get your breakfast and it's time for the plenary, or you're going to, you may find your seat where you can as far as getting your coffee, and there's a group of people there uniquely different. What would be some of those things that you would do or you've heard? Let's say that. Has everyone been to a conference?
Yeah. So here is what I was going to say. To the first scenario you gave, and so this is and I think I just did one of the things that I have to adjust is I tend to speak with my hands a lot, right? So I would catch myself, see me doing it, and I have to catch myself because some people find that offensive when you do the hand gestures and things like that. So that would be one way, like for me, when I'm you go to conferences, you're a conference attendee, and you meet people and things like that. I have to be very careful with the hands, because that's nonverbal communication.
That's body language, yes.
Yeah, body language. And so that would be one thing. But then on the other hand, another example I have with conferences is, when you meet people. So I'm from the South. I guess we're all from the South. Well, a lot of us are. And so people from the South, we like to, kind of get close. We like to hug and hey girl, how's it going? That kind of thing. And so and I have noticed just through my experiences that people in different regions of the country, and even at like conferences, international conferences, where you have people who come from, we have people that come from Australia, things like that. that is just not, for some people, they're not comfortable with that. So I have to remember when I'm at conferences, you sort of, you talk and get a gauge for the individual, to see if that Southern, how a Southern women can be, that Southern, comfort level and all we have is okay. If not, you kind of back it up, right? One of the things I wanted to ask, and this is, this is totally off of your example, is okay, so when we talk about communication accommodation theory, one of the questions I had for one of my colleagues was, so I didn't do that theory, but I asked the person, how do you see that, is that similar to code switching, right? I think it was the question. So if I'm at a conference, right, and I run into somebody that looks like me or something like that, then I might feel comfortable saying, hey girl, what's going on? That kind of thing. You know how we do, hey girl, that kind of, like the braid, something. But so is that, and then, if I'm not, then it's different, right? So is communication accommodation theory similar to code switching? Is it not? That's a question I have for you, because my colleague didn't think it was. So my question to you is, since you brought up that theory, do you think it's similar to code switching?
I'm trying to pull now, and I may be just tired because I've heard code switching. I'm trying to think where I can correlate that, because I think it is. I'm thinking about even cultural, historical, events where things have been switched out. I think there could potentially be that. But let me explore that. Does anyone else have some ideas on that? I want to explore that and get back to you. But what are you all's thoughts on that?
Well, I've been to a conference. It's an interesting conference because we all got, lanyards. And this particular conference, the color of lanyard that you got was dependent upon how large your church was. I'm a pastor, and so it was a pastor's conference. And I really didn't like it because I felt like there was some divergent and convergent behavior depending on what color your lanyard was. Like the people with the green lanyard, they had the biggest churches. I think it was 1,000 and above or something was the green, and then the yellow was 800 to 1,000, and it just kind of went down the line from there. And then the poor people that had 100 people at their church had the red lanyard. And I mean, I can only imagine what it would be like to walk around with the red lanyard whenever somebody else is walking around with the green lanyard. But anyways, it was interesting to see the different groups of people that would start collecting depending on what color your lanyard was, depending on how large your churches was. And there's definitely some divergent behavior going on. Like if somebody was wearing a green lanyard and a red lanyard walked up and started talking to you, it was like, they're trying to over accommodate and you're trying to diverge in some way. Anyway, so that's probably the most communication accommodation theory example I can think of at a conference. It was 2 years ago in Washington, D.C. It was interesting. Yeah.
That is so fascinating because, and I know we haven't gotten to the topic that's been real controversial in the news, which is the critical theories and the latter, but I want you to hold that thought, Jake, because that is such an interesting experience you went through. How many educators do I have in the room tonight? Do I have educators or no educators tonight? All right. Have you all heard, oh my gosh, what is her name? Let me see if I can find it on my phone. Let me just throw this out like this. And she's been under controversy over the years, history, and probably even more so nowadays, because of just, again, the conflicting discussions, debate, confusion over critical race. But beyond critical race, you bring out something that's fascinating by the fact that they put a pin, it's almost like putting, just even during the Holocaust, the Star of David or whatever it was, and they marched people. And you're saying that, okay, they saw this and they like I guess you said the population of a church, maybe 5,000, they had a certain color, and then you know the ones that were maybe orange, they got another color which maybe only had 50 people, and then how to, you know, someone coming up with you with an orange, it's almost like, do they even feel like they're comfortable approaching that person? You know, now granted, being church, spiritual focus, we should have that empathy to say, you're welcome into the fold. But I really think the human spirit is of such that when we mark people or situations like that, it makes a difference. And that's interesting you bring that up. I don't want to digress or anything, but I'm leaning to, let me tell you, again, you're not, I just asked if you all were from education, you know, teachers, professors, instructors, but it was called the brown-eyed, blue-eyed experiment from the 60s. Does that sound any way familiar?
I
Brown-eyed?
can't remember the details,
A
but
little bit.
it does sound
It does a little
familiar.
bit. Mhm.
Okay, so anyway, let me just look it up real quick here, because I've got a bunch of stuff. I don't want to lose you all going on the computer. But this was an educator, and she was so, during the loss of Dr. Martin Luther King, it happened after Dr. Martin Luther King had been assassinated. And, you know, the students, she was wanted to try and educate the students, impress upon them, you know, that we all are uniquely the same and that there shouldn't be any different. Her name is Jane Elliott. And it says, as an American diversity educator, school teacher became known for her blue eyes, brown eyes exercise, which she first conducted with her third grade class in 1968. Jane Elliott. So, you know, Jake, that kind of came to mind when you said they put these on. Just even hearing how you said it, I went to this conference, they put this on me or on us, and then we knew who was associated with who. I'll be honest, that is what likens to critical race theory, that there is, and I don't think there was any intent in that. They may have had something specific, but yet there could have been, because remember, you got a big population, we all think differently, but there could be that perception as, oh, that's a small church, you know, let's go to the big church. That's a big church too. Or it may have been where a small church would say, there's a big church, I want to network with them. But I'm just trying to impress on how important it is for us to be sensitive when we do, I think, make those kind of associations. And then getting back to the theory here, I mentioned about divergence. I'm looking at, there's the upward convergence. So would you think that those that were small churches that wanted to be at least accepted or in the group would try to up their speech? I can say that before I came to ACU for my master's work, I was in law school, and I had an opportunity as a law student, and it was online out of the state of California, but I had the opportunity to study online, but as a law student, had an opportunity to go to conferences that they had in the region here, and they would encourage the students. And I went, and I'm gonna be honest, I felt like a fish out of water. I mean, they all had dark suits on, the women, they even had a certain kind of pump on their shoes, their jewelry, you know, they even, how they postured themselves at the table. And I'm sitting there at the table, truly, internally feeling like shrinking violet. But I think I experienced upward convergence by trying to communicate when they said, now what school do you go to? And it wasn't a brick and mortar like UCLA Law School or Boulder, you know, University of Colorado, Dallas, you know, Texas University, Texas Law School. I'm like, Abraham Lincoln Law School, you know, and then they started asking questions and it was just nerve wracking. So I think that this is really an interesting theory, but that may have answered it from my experience as the conference. Tammy, does that help a little bit?
Yes, that helps a little bit.
Yeah, and that code switching, I'm going to explore that some more. I don't want to give you a wrong answer, but I will explore that and try and get back with you on that. Was there another theory? The other two that we looked at too was the, let's see here, we had, I think I mentioned one of them.
Social penetration theory.
Social exchange.
Yeah, social exchange. And do you see the assumptions that were there? They seek to reward and avoid punishment. We are rational beings. How we evaluate and cost rewards varies over time. And then two assumptions, human relationships are interdependent, relational life is in process. So did anyone explore that one this week?
I explored it in light of the social penetration theory, and I actually used the film Shrek. And so, which I needed a little lightheartedness in my life last week, so I chose Shrek. So, yeah, you did? Okay, so I talked about the social exchange between Shrek and Donkey at the very beginning. Donkey, the high reward, and then so he was really motivated to engage in some social penetration with Shrek, and Shrek, it was high cost at the beginning, and so. But then it flipped because Donkey knew how to find Lord Farquaad, and so then the reward for Shrek was there. So then that they had a reason to move forward with the relationship. Anyway, so I wrote about that in my paper.
Good. I like that.
That was fun.
You know what? My mother, she's 90 this year, but she, even if I mention Shrek, she's like, oh, we got to watch Shrek. She just loves Shrek. And I think it's just a wonderful, yeah, some of these, and I'm glad I appreciate your insight as to like, hey, I need some frivolity in my life. So
I'll never watch Shrek the same again. Now I'll be.
Neither will I, Jake. I did the same. I took the same approach as you. I did social exchange and social penetration, and I just will never, be able to see it without, digging through this. Okay, well, stop right there, and at that moment, yeah.
mm-hmm.
It's been years since I've seen it. I forgot how funny it was. It's a funny movie.
Wasn't it cute? I just love Eddie Murphy. Yeah.
Well, Shrek 1 and Shrek 2, too. I mean,
I never saw it.
There's a Shrek 2, but Shrek 1. So I'm glad you all enjoyed that, and you all did well on those. So, and even our discussion, I can see you grasp it, because this is, I'm going to foot stomp it again. Again, those in La La Land with us that's going to hear this later, be mindful that you want to grasp these and get a good, even just like I said, the layout, your structure of how you studied it, your notes for it, your papers, any feedback, because these cumulative are going to be valuable to you when you reach the end of the course. And like I said, the last module is going to be full development of your integrating and comparative analysis that you will do theory against theory on there. And by the way, I meant to also share with you, it was on last week's guidance for your assignment that we're talking about, but you'll also see it perhaps on this week, your assignment. I think it is on there. There's notes at the bottom of the instructions for the assignment, like the film analysis we talked about, and the parts and pieces of that develops the paper. But if you go to the bottom of the paper, you will see that there is a guidance on the synthesizing and the analysis of the movie, and then how you are integrating and synthesizing that with your theory. And that's why it's so important to be able to have those references as a point of reference when you cite, or your ability to cite when you make a statement. Some of our discussion tonight, I've heard some great ideologies that have been presented. Even Jake, I do like that, this conference experience you had. And then, I had shared even broadening it out as to what future module, anticipation of the modules coming up. But I wouldn't just say it. I would just be able to have to cite someone, Weston Turner, and perhaps other references, again, for my, the depending on where you're at in the program, graduate or doctoral, how you will use those citations and references to support your inferences that you make or assertions on me. Okay? So for module 4, any questions on comments? Everyone good? So module 4, we're going to be talking about, for this week, you got the symbolic interactionism, the relational dialectic, and coordinated management of meaning, and my favorite, Aristotle's Rhetoric, out of this module. And so I thought we would spend, even though for each one of those, you can read up on those, symbolic interactionism. And as Dr. Fleming has stated here, that we're getting into the interpretive theories, and the concept of symbolic interactionism, that's a mouthful, was not developed by a single individual, a number of people. And he basically wrote down very little with what he taught, but it continued to teach a philosophy of means, symbolic interactionism from a semiotic, the study of signs and phenomena. And that has to do, again, with cultures, relationships, and the experiences of individuals. And then how do those, integrate with what our experiences are. So that's symbolic interactionism as a brief capsize on that. And then you have relational dialectics that we'll go over. And then coordinated management meaning. And then again, Aristotle's Rhetoric. So what do you know about, have you all looked at Aristotle's Rhetoric? What did you think about this theory? I mean, it has a lot that's packaged. That's why I really wanted to spend really the remainder time. I've got about 15 minutes, and I want to try and get you out on time. But what did you think about this theory in Aristotle? Can't talk tonight.
So I didn't, I didn't realize, I'll say this, I didn't realize, first of all, let me say this, you hear people throw around the phrase, you hear people throw around the phrase rhetoric, a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not at all the same as what's contemplated in Aristotle's Rhetoric, right? One of the biggest things for me was it took me back to my law school days,
okay,
and even my experience, right? And much of what we were taught in law school about speaking and the art of persuasion and especially when you're trying cases before a jury, right? One of the big things that resonated with me was they talked about in the book, it talked about audience analysis or something like that. And I was like, okay, this is the same as what we do like jury analysis. When you're picking a jury, knowing your audience is like knowing your jury. So that just like really hit home. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what we've been taught, but didn't really know that probably Aristotle's Rhetoric served as the foundation for it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, and having, like I said, at least a little bit of law school experience. Mm-hmm. First thing, I've always heard of Socratic oath, where it's you ask a question, you respond, and I mean, we do that a lot even as instructors, professors. Mm-hmm. But when it came to Aristotle and the different elements of, if you broke it down, the skeleton of it, we're talking about proofing. And Tammy, I really appreciate you bringing that up, because it talks about the proof, the ethos, the character of how a person speaks, the logos, the element of trustworthiness, the pathos, which is the ability to stir emotion, and Think about a defense, the
Hmm.
defense or even the prosecutors.
Yeah.
Wonderful correlation that's there. Um,
Yeah.
when you mentioned you mentioned about the attorneys, but don't forget the jurors. Matter of fact, I mentioned to you all
Sure.
jury experience. Why they didn't call me, but there's others that have experienced it where they probably even gotten to the courtroom and then they started asking specific questions and finally said, no, we don't want you. And by the way, I know it's not reality all the time, but one of my favorite shows is Bull. And it's fascinating because watching all the dynamics as a psychologist, I don't know if he's a forensic psychologist, but it's fascinating to see how, and Jake, it goes back to what you're saying, kind of how we can interrelate these see an interrelationship between these theories as to how people perceive when they first impressions. You know, here's a juror come in, look what they look like, and then all of a sudden, you know, there's a decision or assumptions that are made about that person, but the proofs. So that's based on the three persuasiveness that this theory talks about. Then it talks about the canons related to the rhetoric, which is the invention, the arrangement, style, how someone speaks, delivery, memory. Now, you mentioned your hands, Tammy. I want to get back to that. I'm going to kind of digress back to that. You said when I meet somebody, I have to kind of, you know, until I get to know them. Now, I like a very demonstrative, you know what I'm saying, person and whatnot, but I can relate to that. I use my hands a lot when I'm, you know, actually in a classroom, training, workshop setting. Um, I think that can be good. And I mean, it just depends, but it sounds like it may also feel, and especially some people get to know our backgrounds, the where someone, again, the church experience and their sense of intimidation. So that's where we may make those shifts and adjustments that are there. Then when we get to know one another, as we're getting to know Tammy and Jake, Laura, Maria, you know, we feel comfortable to do our thing, you know. And I always encourage being real anyway. But I found it interesting that Aristotle has all of this embedded in the Aristotle's rhetoric theory and in 5 canons that I just mentioned. And then I want you to remember these because it's important for some of the writing that you're going to be doing and moving forward. And then the rhetoric, which is the forensic ability to prompt feeling of guilt or innocence in a person. And that I think Dr. Kimmy brought this out, Dr. Kippy Fleming, courtroom experience. And then you have, do I have someone that's in the chat? Because I don't want to miss anyone. I hear the phone. Do you all hear that? Is everyone okay?
Hmm.
I keep hearing, I think it's like a cell phone and when you text and then someone responds. I don't think it's mine. But anyway, and then there's that word epidectic, ceremonial speeches with goal of praise or blame. We're going to talk about that in a minute, real brief. And then there's the deliberative, which is political speeches. And I think they even use for the epidectic ceremonial, which would be like eulogies. Now, let's look at these latter that we're saying that I just focused on, the rhetorics, the 3 rhetorics. And perhaps what Tammy has said. Do I have any more insights on this theory? Perhaps that you all that haven't spoken shed light on.
I think it was the ethos, pathos, logos, and I just feel like I can see the importance of all 3 of those when preaching a sermon, just as a pastor, you know,
Yes.
and it's just so interesting to see, and especially, I mean, all 3 for sure, but ethos, you know, and having character. You really lose, you know, if you don't have character as a pastor, your sermon's just not going to carry any weight, even if it's perfectly logical, you know, it's just not gonna, and perfectly presented, and you can speak with, power. It's kind of the passage, you can speak, but if you have no love, then you're just a loud clanging cymbal and stuff like that. So
Yes.
I think, anyways, it really brought up that in my mind as I was reading this week.
I think that's wonderful. And when I reflect on that, I'm exploring, as a matter of fact, I've got a wonderful book. I can't get my hand on it because it's too far across the room. But I've gone back to 1828. I got my hands on with little or nothing. I think I paid maybe $6, $7, but it's Tom and Jake, this would interest you being in ministry. And you all, the rest of the class too, Thomas Dick, D-I-C-K, Thomas Dick. He actually influenced David Livingstone's call to salvation and missions. And so I've been exploring Dr. David Livingstone, the great missionary's journey and spiritual journey and his call to missions. And so reading his bio, he's reflecting on these great writers. And so this theologian named Thomas Dick has come into the picture of things, and it's fascinating. So that's one classic. I love the classics. And so another classic I'm sure you've probably heard of, I hope, Jake, I want to think you may have, Tammy, the rest of you, but his name is Jonathan Edwards. I believe that's the great theologian. And he, I think, did a sermon called Sinners, Hands of an Angry God. And if you ever know any background on that, he was so demonstrative, so passionate, so convincing that in this sermon, and I think that they have it on YouTube. And I haven't gone through the whole thing, I've printed it out, but just to hear it. But they said that now remember, this is back 1700s. But it was so convincing that people started fainting and just had a physical response. It wasn't Pentecostal, but literally where they felt, it was fire and brimstone from that history. So it just shows how, like you said, the value and how communication can influence people. The other is, we mentioned political speeches. Any other examples of, perhaps that's my example, and Jake said the church. Is there any other examples from these three areas, or the proofs of communication and the rhetorics that you could think of, maybe a famous presentation? I know that in the transcript Dr. Fleming had, there are some like Dr. King, I think John Kennedy. Can you recall something from John Kennedy, one of his speeches? Became historic narrative? Go ahead.
For my group project where I'm working on for my little individual contribution to my group is Barack Obama's 2004 Democratic National Convention speech. So, but that one stuck out to me as just having a lot of strong proofs, all three. So I'm kind of working on that. Some people say that's what made him president and stuff. So it's a great speech. So
yeah, I've heard that there's elements of that. The one from Kennedy, and of course I was in 5th grade, but like I said, it's become something that you just, and it's neat when you think of these speakers, like for John Kennedy, one of his phrases is, "Ask not what you can do for your country, but what you not what you."
Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then another one is one of our presidents. I want to say it was Roosevelt's. It may have been. I think I have. I've twisted my presidents up. He's on the tip of my tongue. I can't think. I'm so ashamed because I visited his home and I love him. He's from Independence, Missouri.
That was Roosevelt, I think.
Who?
I think that was Roosevelt. That was from Missouri.
No, not
Wasn't
Roosevelt. It's the one, and he walked all over the place. But anyway, he said, "This is a day that will live in infamy."
FDR.
Was that FDR? I thought it was
I
FDR.
think that was Roosevelt.
That was, yeah, that was,
I was thinking Truman, but Truman said
I
something.
think that was Roosevelt.
But
yeah,
Truman,
the day that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. Yeah, that was FDR. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So see, those are things that have influence. They're almost, you know, we hear like YouTube influencers, but truly these are influencers, historical influencers. I think when we look at just commentaries, and I mean, it doesn't always have to be positive. There's terrible, and how we see. So to close out this session, as I'm looking at the clock, it just shows how impactive speech, communication, and we can either make and break it. And that's what I want to leave you all with tonight. But I just am fascinated with Aristotle's rhetoric, and I do appreciate you all's insight on that. Are there any other closing comments? I have one more little something I want you to do if you will let me indulge you.
I just wanted to tell Jake, I ran across an interesting article. I haven't finished reading it, but it's called Aristotle and the Art of Preaching, and it's by a Roman Catholic priest. And I thought, you know, but because for my little contribution, I'm looking at Barack Obama, but his eulogy for the South Carolina, I think it was South Carolina, you know, the people that were killed in the church in South Carolina.
Terrible. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm looking at that eulogy as a form of I can never pronounce this word, but is it epidictic
Yes.
speech?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in running across that, in doing that, I thought about you know, I was, you know, kind of analyzing that because he kind of comes off as a preacher, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
And so it made me interested in, like, okay, has anybody ever looked at, you know, Aristotle's rhetoric in light of preachers, you know? Yeah, so there's a interesting article. I'll send you the link to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting.
Really interesting.
I found the other one that had to do with the epidictic. It was ceremonial. I thought it also mentioned eulogies. And, you know, in eulogies, most people, it's expectation. That's what tendency to want to kind of like do with you know, that's something that I'm exploring this last quarter. It seems like it's much stronger for me to really say, why are we doing that? Why is it like this? Well, why can't we do it differently? I mean, like, I think someone mentioned, you know, people, well, no, it was my Bible study. I just finished that, but how we can make people comfortable when they come to church. And it may be a great, grandiose church. Maybe a modest church with a small little country church with 25 people who have always been together for 50 years, but then the new person comes, how will they treat that new person? It may be the person that there's the only church, which is that grand church, 5,000 people, 2,500. But will that new person feel comfortable, and what will those components? Eulogies. I'm bringing that up because the expectation is you say, it's like, say something nice. It's like, is that really, you know, and nowadays people are more progressive with their thinking, and it's like, do we really, that's not, but I'm not being honest, you know. So I think it just begs to explore, you know, just our reality, and it goes back to even those primary things as the proofs, the character of a person that Aristotle mentions, the value of how and what they're saying, and does it move in a positive way. So on that note, and this is a great way to end it, do you all have your Bibles near? Any of you?
Does online count? Yeah.
Your cell phone counts.
Thank you. Cell phone counts. Yeah.
Put it on the back like a football player, and you pull to get your score stuff, and you want to pull it down. So I'm going to Laura. I'm going to put you to work, okay? Ephesians 4:29, real quick. Mary Elena. Is Maria?
Maria, it's Maria Elena, but I go by Maria.
It's Maria. Okay, I want to honor your name there. Maria, Colossians 4:6. Tammy. Psalms 141:3.
Psalms what now, ma'am?
141:3.
Okay.
Jake, would you be kind to read Proverbs 15:1-2? And then I'll wrap up with one I see here. So let's just go around the room. Tell me what your verse is. I don't want to lose my place here. So Laura, lead us off here. Just read that scripture.
Okay, so I have Ephesians 4:29. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen.
Awesome. Maria?
Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you should answer each person.
How about you, Tammy?
Says, set a guard over my mouth, Lord. Keep watch over the door of my lips.
Okay, and Jake?
A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise adorns knowledge, but the mouth of the fool gushes folly.
All right, and then I'd like to do Proverbs 16:24. Gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body. So this is just a wonderful reminder of, I mean, we're talking again academically, intellectually, as to the technical perspective, if I can say it, as to the subject, the topic. And we started off, the first week communication, and this just, I think, was very poignant as to how valuable it is, communication and from a spiritual Christian perspective there. Do y'all agree? So that's what I'd like to leave you with, and not unless you have any other questions, concerns, then I'm going to close this in a brief word of prayer. Any questions, concerns? Again, remember Danielle Clueless. She is Clueless. She is celebrating her birthday, so if you have time, you want to shoot her an email or post something, I'm sure she would appreciate it. She really wanted to be here, but she's with her family. And just remember, again, class members, for the sake of privacy, I won't go into names, not unless they tell me, but we've just got a number of people that are experiencing some challenges, lots of health loss. And Tammy, we definitely will remember you with your friend too. She shared so friendships and loved ones mean, and I just hope you feel the presence of God, and her memories will give you comfort during this difficult time. So,
thank you.
okay. Let's pray. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time, Lord. Lord, we feel you in our presence, and we just ask that we be good witnesses to you as we walk our day-to-day walk, be it with our family, friends, co-workers, and in the marketplace. Thank you for all that you've blessed us with, Lord. It's just so many to enumerate tonight, but you know all that you have given us, and we just want to always thank you for your blessings and just your scripture that tells us how to live, Lord. Lord, I thank you for those that have been able to attend tonight. Be with those that weren't able to be with us, but bless their lives and give them all they need, along with Jake, Maria, Tammy, Laura. Just let the time slow down that they can be effective with their writing and as well as juggling their lives. I thank you for blessing the opportunity to be their shepherd and always be my North Star as to doing the right thing and impressing on me and chasing my spirit, Lord. Lord, be with Tammy and others that are experiencing losses and all perspectives of hardship, things unexpected. I ask that you comfort Tammy and this dear friend's family through this difficult loss. And again, may the memories of her friend be comfort to her during this time. and allow those to be around her to comfort her and the family as being good shepherds and Samaritans during this difficult time. Lord, we just thank you again for this evening, and we ask that you bless this time and just everything that we aspire to do. We love you, Lord. In thy name we pray. Amen.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Thank you.
evening. If there's
Bye, everybody.
any need, you know how to get in touch with me, okay?
Yes.
All right. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.